Sam, you're an investor in the creator economy. Like, you quite literally look for people using creator tools to create niche, large communities from all manner of location on the earth. The idea that like empowering that same class with software building isn't going to create innovation is like,
it will.
That's insane.
I just think the value will be in the communities, in the trust, in a bunch of other stuff. The software will be like incidental. It's like cheaper to make.
I'm with Dave here. I think this unlocks so many new software developers who are just everyday people.
And that is why you are the Morons and I am one of the lessons.
Jess, do you want to take a side here?
Guys, do you follow a Twitter account, VCs congratulating themselves?
What is it?
Oh my God, it's one of the best Twitter accounts in the world. It's just VCs congratulating themselves.
Did you just post on it? Because you do that a lot.
I actually have it's in a non-account. I have no idea who it is, but the person behind it and I are in close contact because I provide fodder for him and we like to share notes.
Aren't you basically the main generator for this guy?
People have at times said that I am VC's congratulating. I'm not. I wish I were. It's a great account. But this guy or girl, whoever it is, just really did a great cultural crossover. They posted a picture of, do you know who Hawk Tuh is?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, I believe we've discussed this.
So it's a picture of her the Y Combinator side. It says, breaking, Hawk Tuh has been accepted into the Y Combinator class.
Oh my God.
No, wait. Is that true?
Probably not, but it's fucking hilarious, and I hope it's true. That's the beauty of this, is like, it doesn't matter. If it's true, it's hilarious, and if it's not true, it's brilliant.
It's also hilarious.
This is VC Brags, right, Sam?
Yes, the @VC Brags, but it's known as VCs congratulating themselves. It's a fabulous
I wouldn't be
account.
surprised if they were both VC Brags and VCs congratulating themselves, and that there are just a number of these accounts.
I also wouldn't be surprised if Sam is actually this account, and this is his smokescreen to try to throw off the trail.
Look, I wish I were, because I think it's great, but I'm in good enough contact with this guy. Look, he sends me stickers. Like, he sent me t-shirts and stickers. Like, this guy's the best.
Well, he wants you to keep congratulating yourself so he can stay in business. You give him plenty of fodder.
I try to like point him at specific tweets of mine I think he'll particularly like.
Oh my God, Sam, you're the only person who pitches himself for the unflattering meme accounts.
But it's not unflattering. It's the best.
It follows the Sam lesson rule of engagement, Jess, which is all engagement is good engagement.
Lick the cookie.
Oh, lick the cookie.
Number go up.
No, it's Hawk Tuh is not lick the cookie. It's something else.
Oh, God.
Sam, how was VC golf this morning? Did you learn how to play golf and complete your indoctrination into venture capital hood?
Guys, I was invited to Half Moon Bay to learn how to play golf with a bunch of VCs. And I was like, of course, because as venture capital just becomes traditional asset management investment banking, the last step to total conversion is to play golf.
Totally.
Oh, man.
Here's the thing. I was so excited. I was like, this is it. I'm finally going to become what this industry should. It's not for me. It's not for me. I don't get it.
The sport of golf is not for you? Why? It's too slow.
You know, I just sat there. They had a pile of balls and we were supposed to like check our form every time and perfectly try to hit the thing.
It's too slow for you.
I was trying to hit them as fast as I could.
Sam, I'm having a really hard time processing this. We went from a industry that went kiteboarding and extreme sports doing to now we're doing golf outings.
Well, that's because we're asset managers now, Dave Morin.
Oh,
that's
God.
what we do.
Never.
We have to
never happening. Sam, we have to fight back. We need to go skiing somewhere intense.
A lot of the VC legends are now in their 60s, and I don't think that they can do as much extreme sporting.
They should just retire.
They should have retired a long time ago, and they would have if it weren't for work from home culture and COVID. But work from home, they preserved their fiefdoms from home while they play golf, and like we need to kick them out.
Yeah.
But Dave, should we announce our contest?
Speaking of extreme sport.
Here we go. Maybe we should.
We're going to announce the contest. So here's the more or less contest, which is Dave and I are putting together our invite list for an annual pilgrimage to ski big lines in Alaska. Yep. And we're like, who's on this trip and who should we invite? And we're like, should we do a more or less promotion to find a fan who might want to come for a very special more or less session?
This is dangerous, you guys. You might get a super sketchy person. How are you going to qualify these fans?
It's totally unclear, but we're doing it live.
I think the call to action now will just be, we don't have, like, we're going to crowdsource this, which is, if you have a metric, how should we evaluate? Do we need like a ski promo video from the person plus 4 startup ideas?
Yeah, but you can make that with AI these days.
But Sam, didn't you create a new piece of software that helps you interview people? Standard aptitude. Let's use standard aptitude for skiing.
You know, you could do that. The skiing portion, I haven't designed it for athletic feats, but I will tell you, guys, it's great. So this is for the listeners. We can move on to real topics.
But couldn't you submit videos?
Yeah, we'd have to change the flow a little bit.
AI, Britt's right. Anyone can ski lines.
No, we know the difference.
Yeah, I think I can definitely tell.
What? Oh, whatever. You'll know AI is good when they can submit ski videos that fake Sam and Dave out.
We're going to do venture capital outings, not capital outings.
Okay, here's the application form. Fine. 1 video of you skiing, and it can't be AI. Second is you have to pitch a really good venture capital idea, I think.
What?
Or like a hot take. Because you have to make sure these people are fun to talk to.
You also need to submit your DEXA scan.
Your DEXA scan?
I need a DEXA scan because, Hobbs hours are more expensive.
Oh my God. Is this the kind of episode we're going to like listen to and be like, what the fuck? Is that where we're going with this?
No, I think, Jess, you should probably take it back to the hardcore normal.
Okay, guys, this is how much you don't want to talk about OpenAI, is that we're into Sam DEXA scan territory.
Do we have to talk about OpenAI?
Well, we do, actually, because, we should welcome people to another episode. It's nice to see you guys. Sorry to miss last week. Was going through a minor procedure surgery with our 5-year-old.
Hope everything's okay.
Yes, everything is going as expected for the recovery. So there has been a lot of AI news. OpenAI has raised the biggest venture round in the history of venture capital. I think we'll all agree it's not venture capital. So maybe that
just capital
is where we can start.
Those guys are playing golf is what they're doing.
They're playing golf. I don't think Josh Kushner plays golf. Do we know? Thrive Capital? I can't picture it.
He doesn't seem like a golfer.
I bet he will in 10 years.
Probably 2 years. Yeah. Masa's son, golfer, SoftBank.
One of the great signals for good deals. You have a good deal when Masa invests.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but we've got this mega round, and I think it is a good time to kind of check in on, it's fascinating. And so there's probably more to talk about. I'm particularly interested in, we've reported that they've told employees today that there's going to be a secondary component, there's been a consistent number of OpenAI secondaries, which I haven't totaled them up yet, but I think a massive amount of money has been taken off the table by employees, which is kind of interesting. And then, of course, it's just this broader point we're at where, OpenAI is still, though, releasing models and good models. And I think we've kind of had crickets from Google, from Apple, from others. So it is a good moment to check back in.
Well, I also think one of the more interesting things that came out with all of this press this week around OpenAI is that they asked their investors to not invest in any of the competitors, which is...
Doesn't everyone do this?
It sends a weird signal. I don't know. It's like, why all of a sudden now do they care? I think it actually sends people to the competitors.
So we were actually, for some inside baseball, this is interesting. I should have consulted you a few days ago when we were hearing this. And in my news meeting, I was kind of like, would anyone who was taking a big check from an investor want that investor to write a big check in a direct competitor?
Of course not, but a lot of people's investing strategies and LLMs are to just spread across the big, 4 or 5 to hopefully get 1 or 2 of the winners, right?
They're just flexing. It doesn't matter.
Do you think that is of interest that they're asking for that now versus a year ago? Like, why didn't they care a year ago?
Because they weren't the swinging dicks a year ago. They were still now they think they're the swinging dicks, so they're going to tell the other VCs to stay out.
I don't know. I think they were swinging dicks.
I also think these things happen. I don't think they have you sign this in writing. I think this is all that part of venture capital that you guys won't understand that I don't really understand, which is like, don't screw me,
Well, duh. Yeah.
I don't know. I agree. People think this is a big deal, Brett. So you're in the
I don't think it's a big deal,
but
but people are mostly wrong. What I would say is interesting though is the secondary thing. The secondary thing is interesting because here's the interesting story. There's two forces going on at play here. One is OpenAI's basic strategy is to say that they need so much money to just incinerate it, right? And the thing about secondaries is the way they usually happen early in companies is when the company says, hey, I don't want to give up more equity, but the funds are like, I want to invest more. And so you say, well, fine, like we'll do some secondary things so you can buy up, but we don't have to get more dilution. And so like on one hand, you're like, okay, well, is this investor demand driven? Da, da, da. The other side, which is interesting, is like, we're already in a place where companies stay private forever. And OpenAI has been the most extreme version of this ever. And so I do wonder from a talent retention perspective, whether they just have to start offering this because people are like, what the fuck? There's at 150 billion. I'm eating ramen. Like, let me take some equity off the table.
Yeah, that was going to be my take on this, which is, I don't remember, do any of you remember what the Yuri Milner round was at Facebook?
I think it was like 15 or 30, maybe
Glad
30.
You asked, Dave. To this day, my biggest scoop.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the point at which liquidity started happening in secondaries at Facebook. You can think about it in terms of actual years, like how many years has this thing been private? Or you can think about it in terms of, I guess you could call it capital years, which is, at some point, the scale of the capital stack gets so big that secondary becomes, to Sam's point, the only way that people can get the piece that they want. But it also becomes, the gravity for the employee base becomes so strong that you have to start providing it. Otherwise, you got things like, you look at the CTO leaving last week. If I'm the CTO or anyone at the leadership level there and I don't have liquidity and I'm looking over at all of these people that are leaving, raising billion-dollar rounds and getting instantly liquid, I'm thinking about leaving too, right? Like that's just the logical thing to do if that's the incentive. And so you have to actually start incentivize people to stick around.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, like, look, the other thing on the Facebook analogy is like, okay, so you're an employee. Let's pretend you took, I think it was 30 or something when Yuri started buying up secondary, which was, by the way, 100% him wanting more as much as anything else, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I'd say the interesting thing there is the company was once again worth $30 billion for a hot second in the public market, right? So taking the early liquidity, it's an interesting hedge too, right? Because there was, obviously with 2020 hindsight, X years later with Facebook working, with Meta working, that was a pretty awful trade for the employees that took liquidity at that point. But not necessarily if you take a trading mentality strategy to it about what things are worth and how they're going to trade. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah, and Jess, the other thing that you mentioned was there appears to be some strategy shifts going on here with the product. And one of the things I'm hearing in the back channels is that OpenAI has made a strategy shift in terms of their product strategy. The 4.0 model is a slower model, quite literally. It takes a lot longer to run. It does a lot more sophisticated things. It does more advanced reasoning than anybody else is providing, but it's slower. And, they've pretty visibly stopped investing in this search GPT thing. And so on the one hand, you have Perplexity and Google competing over speed models, right? How fast can you answer the question? Can you sort of be in this search world on the one hand? And then on the other hand, you've got OpenAI tacking in a totally different direction, which is, can we provide the most high quality, slower models, but better reasoning, right? And I think that that's perhaps one of the most interesting divergences in the game right now that I think is very interesting.
Dave, do you think that signals a sort of consumer versus enterprise divide in terms of focus? Like the bulk of OpenAI's revenue, I believe, will ultimately come from businesses, but that's a very different use case than the sort of chatbot.
It's hard to say. I think you've got Anthropic out there also that seems to be going far more enterprise. If you talk to developers on the ground, a lot of people are using Anthropic right now because the Sonnet model is extremely sophisticated, particularly for doing things related to software engineering. And so, clearly they're kind of in tandem with Amazon, chasing the more, and maybe with Cohere and a couple others, kind of chasing the more enterprise story, because enterprises want to do things on premise. They've got different needs in a lot of cases than what the core models are providing. And so I think, to answer your question very directly, I think this is actually more consumer driven, that people that are interacting with these things are trying to learn how to use them. And OpenAI is seeing that people don't really know how to interact with a chatbot and get the answers that they want. And so they're having to switch it's not exactly a user experience change, but it is, in terms of providing a longer response time, but giving you a better response to a more general query that you're asking the thing. And that's something that they're going to need to do to scale to a lot more people on the consumer side.
I just, as a consumer, I feel like time is the death to all engagement.
In AI, I'm not sure that it is. I think in AI, like, you want a better answer.
I think that's a great and open question. And to your point, it speaks exactly to your point about figuring out the use cases. Because I think that's true if I want a perfect transcript to this pod.
Yeah.
But if it's a more search like use case or information retrieval, I probably abandon a third of my ChatGPT queries on speed. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. And so I think they know that. And I think they know that the reasoning type answers are the ones that people want more of. And they also know that they're already losing the speed race to Perplexity and to Google. And they simply cannot compete with Google on the speed race. Like, Google is going to win the speed race. Perplexity might grow a nice little small tree in Google's redwood forest, but like, Google's going to win the speed race.
That tree will be crushed. I mean, I think this stuff is all going to be commodified, right? And if you said, hey, we have to try to go up market to like do something, fine. I also think the reality is the real risk here is like putting too much strategy points on what is a startup still. I think they're just doing shit. You know, like they're going to go back and forth. I don't think they have like oh my God, we have like a major strategy thing. I think it's just like, yeah, you released a new model. You're proud that it can do chain logic or whatever it is. And it's going to be a little slower. Then you're going to release another fast one. Then you're going to release another slow one. People are still wandering in the redwoods, so to speak.
I'm team Anthropic right now. I used to be team Gemini until Google messed it all up. And then Anthropic and Claude seem to be, continuing to steal, first of all, a lot of the OpenAI team away from OpenAI.
One of their co-founders,
I know. Dirk Kingma, who was one of the co-founders, just joined this week. And he claimed, that he wants to be at a company that's developing powerful AI systems responsibly. Little ding there to Altman. But I just also find it better. And I'm really curious how this all plays out.
But better for what?
Better answers. Did you guys also see the Notebook LM stuff?
Notebook LM is great.
I know. Is this like Google's side door into like coming back into the game?
I think what's happening here is that Google, as they do, releases a lot of things, right? They've got people doing all kinds of things all over the place. And Notebook LM's actually been around for quite a while. But I think what they've actually stumbled onto here is that most people, like I was saying about these slower models, don't know what to ask these things to get the question out of them. Like, the model needs a bunch of context in order to answer your question. And so Google's kind of stumbled upon this reality and have flipped the model to some extent. Like, to use Notebook LM, you first have to upload a PDF and then it starts working, right? Like, this is a big change to the user experience flow for how to use these models. And they also happen to throw this podcast voice UI on top of it, which is just like, they just sort of casually did this. And it's, I think, a really interesting, perhaps, direction for them to go in, which is to tack that way. I mean, I think you might see in 3-6 months that the sort of Gemini core user experience is thrown out in favor of the Notebook LM experience because it's just better for everyday consumers.
So can we shift gears quickly? And I'm curious at everyone's kind of take on like the competitive race at this point. I mean, I got to say, like, Apple still not in it. Google, to your point, has a ton of interesting things, but like obviously doesn't have anything like the developer penetration and all of that. Like,
I just don't think it doesn't even matter. I think everyone's so over their skis on this. It's like the technology will keep developing. It's super easy to rip and replace all this stuff when there's cheaper things, when there's better things. Like, it's way too easy to switch. There's no lock-in. like we're going to have years of like it gets a little bit better, it gets a little bit better, it does a little more stuff, and developers are just going to treat it like any other resource, right? Which is totally fine.
Yeah, I think I agree, but might disagree with part of that, Sam, which is that I really believe that Apple continues to be the dark horse here. In particular, we don't have a lot of consumer applications being built with LLMs yet. And the reason why is that it costs a fortune to send these API calls off to OpenAI, Anthropic, or whatever. They might be able to drive the cost down of API calls. I highly doubt they're going to be able to subsidize it. Like at the rate they're having to raise capital and at the unprofitability of their business models, they can only increase prices from here. And so that leaves this really interesting question, which is, when is Apple going to make APIs available for the on-device LLMs? Like if you're running iOS 18 right now, which is really amazing to see, they're summarizing every single notification, every single group chat, and every single email. And they're doing it all on device with on-device localized LLMs, which means they're today already delivering at billion scale LLM-driven consumer experiences. And those APIs are not yet available to developers. When they are, there's going to be a Cambrian explosion of consumer applications that happen because you can now use these things for free. Yeah,
I agree with Dave. I think if Google and Apple don't win in this war, consumers are just too lazy. They don't want to learn something new, and they're going to be able to give them the best experience. I do buy that like Anthropic or OpenAI might have a big play in the enterprise world, but for the consumer world of AI, those two have to be the winners.
Well, like, first of all, I'm not going to, I obviously deeply agree with the fact that the incumbents are going to crush all of this, right? And I think that's where all the money is going to be made, right? I've been saying this for 2 years, as have several people, and I'm not alone in that. Like, so that's easy. That's table stakes. I guess the question I have for you guys, to be provocative, but also hit it, is like, what are these great consumer experiences everyone's excited about? We take it as a given that there are these great consumer experiences, but I'd say the more I play and see, there are absolutely point use cases. There's absolutely no question. I've developed apps plenty in the last year that like use AI as a point solution or something that's nice. It makes something better. It makes something a little easier. But this kind of like, we're waiting for this moment where things get revealed. Well, all of a sudden it's dramatically better. It's like, yeah, fine. You summarize my text messages. Do I care? Right? Like, I just don't think it's not clear to me that there is a major step function in consumer product versus just like, yeah, like it's a nice thing. And it's kind of commodity.
I disagree with that. I feel like, we've seen a lot in recent days in the health sphere, right? And just like the advancement of personalized health and medicine, I think, will be incredibly valuable for consumers, from like disease detection and like personalized diets and strength training routines and wellness things.
But just to push you, Britt, like, what are you expecting to happen here? It's like right now you want to pay a few bucks, you get some coach off of Instagram who will make you a custom diet and workout plan.
I think that's the basic version of this.
You already have apps that'll diagnose your skin rash. Sure, they get better and faster, but like, does that change the world? Not in the first world.
Not that stuff. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the higher order bit of like, eventually when we have really personalized health data, like all my health records, MRI data, my DEXA scans, like my blood draws, all of that stuff, where it understands my body versus your body and can actually give me very custom recommendations for what I need to be doing differently, not like a personal trainer AI.
Just to push you for a second. I've done all that shit. I did my DEXA scan last week, got an A+.
It doesn't exist. Nothing exists yet that combines all of this.
But like, you combine all of it.
VC brags.
What'd you get? Yeah, VC brags. I got a perfect 100 at my DEXA scan.
I can tell you definitively, I will not get a 100.
I was surprised to get 100 on it too.
Okay, first of all, Sam, we had a long conversation around why you censored your actual score from the internet upon posting, but you feel compelled to share it.
This is a private space.
Limited podcast.
This is our private family chat.
I believe he was quoting, it's kind of obnoxious to post how good it was.
But this podcast is all about me being obnoxious in my head, at least. Look, guys.
Apparently. Okay, let's keep it moving.
My point, Dave, is what's going to happen is, and Britt, it's just going to tell you to eat more protein. Brought to you by David.
No, it's not.
Yes,
those look delicious. What are those?
Guys, these are 28 grams of protein in 150 calories. This is the new, by the way, this is the new success story this is it. All the influencers are on this.
So everyone can see who's listening.
It's a bar.
The David bar.
Of course I approve. That's my real name in my favorite font.
It's the founder of RX Bar's Next Greatest Hit. And all the influences are all over this thing. And I just got my David bars.
Are they good? They taste good?
How do they taste? Yeah, how do they taste?
They're great.
Sam, you're the only influencer that I've heard about it from. So,
well, I've heard about it from bigger influencers.
While we're pushing protein, the official protein sponsor of the Information's WTF conference next week.
It should be a concert, really. Let's be real.
It should totally be a concert. Is the ProMix. So I love it. I love their Rice Krispie treats.
Who's the musician playing at WTF?
Brett's singing.
I'll be there. Oh, yeah. I can do some good improv.
The ProMix Rice Krispie treats are good. I'm into those. But the basic point is, Britt, your fancy AI, it's going to be like, ooh, we looked at your DEXA scan and all these things. We computed it all. And the answer is eat more protein.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there's way more to it than that.
But Britt, also just to push on you on this, like the point I was making about Apple making the small LLMs available via API is not like the small LLMs are not going to achieve what you're talking about.
I'm not talking about device. That. I think we decoupled that. Sam was just asking, like, what will consumers actually use AI in a meaningful way?
Well, I just think that all the health stuff is interesting because, like, the whole point of it is, like, we don't have long-term studies on any of this shit. The blood boys, the, like, supplements, the creatine. And so, like, what is the LLM going to tell you magically, like, because it has your DEXA scan? Nothing, right?
Sam,
it's just going to...
My only pushback here is that, like, there have been small improvements to the way that we build applications many times over the last 20, 30 years.
100%.
And each one of them creates a somewhat Cambrian explosion of new user experience, frankly, that really does move the ball forward. Now, does that mean you're going to have another OpenAI scale breakout? No, but like, I'm very interested in the applications that get built on top of this. And I think it's very simple to make the statement that as the cost of using these APIs goes to zero, the more great applications you're going to see.
I'll give you that. I think there will be some, but like, let's put it this way. What was the biggest real breakthrough, I'd argue, in the last several years that changed application development dramatically? I would argue I would say it's the camera.
Camera, Ajax, MySQL.
Ajax was okay. Like, yeah. To that point, it's like, yeah, Ajax was nice and kind of sort of helped like unlock Web 2 because you didn't have to load as many pages and it was a little faster. I'll give you that. I think OpenAI and like AI in general could be like an Ajax level innovation, but that is nothing. That's not like a real unlock. That was like a minor unlock is my basic point. It helped a little bit. It didn't change the world. It just kind of was like, okay. And I think that's kind of what we'll see with a lot of this LLM stuff is like, it's fine. People will build more stuff with it. It's not going to change things fundamentally. Like the camera changes things fundamentally.
The only retort I have to that, if we're talking about fundamental change, is that I do believe that the ability to do software engineering with LLMs is a fundamental change to the universe.
It makes it a lot more fun to make software. I'll give you that.
It's fun. It's faster.
Yeah. So is PHP.
I think it's cheaper, right? Like the thing that I've been telling people is that, you know, I was able to build an application myself. You know, I think I've talked about this a little bit so far on the pod, but I was able to build an application that would have taken 3 to 5 people and probably a $2 million seed round 1 year ago to build. And so this fundamentally changes the entire way that we think about the capital stack. It also changes the entire way I think people think about building software. Like I've been calling this the personal software era, which is that I can now in my spare time, or not even my spare time, my work time, where I need a critical use case that would make me more productive or make my team more productive, I can go and build a piece of software that doesn't need to scale. It doesn't need to go out to hundreds of millions of people. Like I can just build it. It makes my work and my life more fun, more productive, and it happens in a few days. Like, to me, that's a fundamental change to the universe.
But just to push you, and I won't keep harping on it, it's like, look, does this fuck the whole low-code, no-code movement? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Does it fuck SaaS? Yes.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, you're not using Zapier to put this shit together. It doesn't matter.
Who
like
cares?
There's 1,000 ways. There's just completely irrelevant. So all that middleware shit that people were valuing, I think gets washed out, right?
Yep.
That is a business logic change. That is an ecosystem change. I agree with that. But like it just isn't clear to me that this creates a whole bunch of new use cases, or the fact that now 1 million times more people develop software means we develop anything that doesn't already exist. I'm an under on it, right? It doesn't mean there isn't some improvement. I just don't think it's I don't think it's a Cambrian explosion. I don't think it's a major unlock.
You don't think 1 million more people will develop software?
I think they will, but I don't think it
Sam,
matters.
there's something like only 4 million software developers in the world right now, yet there's 1 billion users of
if you
mobile
think there's
devices.
some kid that's
The
hidden
delta's
away in some
unbelievable.
dark corner of the universe who doesn't know how to program, but all of a sudden is going to have some brilliant breakthrough, fine. I'm an under.
I disagree with you. No, I'm with Dave on this. I think this is like not just 1 million. This is 10 million plus.
Sam, you're an investor in the creator economy. Like, you quite literally look for people using creator tools to create, niche large communities from all manner of location on the earth. The idea that like empowering that same class with software building isn't going to create innovation is like,
it will.
That's insane.
I just think the value will be in the communities, in the trust, in a bunch of other stuff. The software will be like incidental. It's like cheaper to make.
I'm with Dave here. I think this unlocks so many new software developers who are just everyday people.
And that is why you are the Morons and I am one of the lessons.
Jess, do you want to take a side here?
Well, I think the Morons could be right with respect to like tools and features and capabilities, but Sam could be right in terms of business. Now,
sure.
I kind of buy the analogy, like when the iPhone came out, we still didn't have Uber or Google Maps or stuff like that. Like, so I think it's very hard to call the impact of AI. At the same time, I think its capabilities are way overstretched, or in part because how else do you raise the biggest private tech round of all time?
Well, you know how you do that. That's more about capital markets than is anything else.
Yes. But so anyway, I think it's fascinating. But what's interesting to me about this debate is like it kind of is getting, I think, more calcified. Like I think every couple months, like more people sort of more stridently believe what they believe on either side of it, and more money is going in.
That perhaps says that what we're kind of loosely saying here, Jess, which is that the innovations, like all of them have been talked about and kind of thought of, and now it's like a question of executing on all of it, and it's going to be a decade of kind of figuring out where to go from here.
Yeah. I also think I just return to Apple for a second. So Apple's interesting to me because it's kind of a case study and like a really big incumbent in how aggressively or not they have to respond and, what their strategy is. So on one hand, like Apple appears to really not be in like the frontier model LLM game. They've made that decision. I think a lot of that is also coming from investors. Like Apple cares so much about its CapEx and so on and so forth. Like they clearly aren't trying to build the next major model, in the frontier sense. Dave, you talked about a lot of the features and on-device stuff and user experience and Apple Intelligence, like things where they seem like they could be really well positioned, but also that stuff hasn't launched.
Well, I think you can expect it to. Like that to me is like these APIs, specifically the APIs they're not available to developers yet. And once they are, that means there's a free LLM that developers can use, which to me, like that is a fundamental change in the whole business of what's going on. And when that happens, there's like a real change in terms of the choice developers and businesses can make in order to which APIs they want to use.
I agree that it could be game changing. And I sort of had that reaction when they've been talking about a lot of this stuff, which they haven't shipped. But yeah, I really don't know. I think we kind of need a new framework for talking about it, honestly, because it's not just this thing that is or isn't going to be important. But at the same time, like so much of it is way ahead of their skis. The promises, the capital costs, and
that's kind of why I'm using this framework. I think of it across these 3 buckets. There's the fast models, the slow models, and the edge models, right? Like you've sort of got Google and Perplexity chasing fast models. You've now got OpenAI chasing slow models. And then you've got Apple chasing these edge or small models, right? And they each have different strategic implications, right? Like this ecosystem is now enormous. I think it's like actually does a disservice to our listeners and to everybody out there trying to understand this stuff to call this all one thing anymore. this is a generally useful technology which actually has many different manifestations now, and each one will have its own ecosystem around it, actually. And you can actually get into debating strategy points and merits around each of these different ways to think about it. And by the way, if you go into the fourth category, which like I think Cohere is basically the leader in, is the on-premise enterprise model, right? Which is like its own entire universe that we barely ever talk about on the pod, but like is a entire universe in into itself, where there will be a whole bunch of things going on that, you know, Cohere, probably Oracle, probably many others are like, you know, playing around in. And so I think those four categories can have like, we could do an entire pods on each one and it would be useful.
I just to end this on for now, like I do also think some of these funding rounds are still insane.
Oh, that's for certain.
Totally insane.
That's for certain.
And that I'm kind of surprised. Like we have seen VCs now have data. The VCs that invested in inflection, the VCs that invested in character, the teams were acqui-hired and they got like a licensing fee to compensate, you know, for their money. So
I think Sam's made this point pretty well on the pod. I mean, the business case for these valuations is pretty wild.
The insanity is continuing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just because there's nowhere to put money. People don't like, there's nowhere to put money. Yeah. So you're either going to like look for, either you have to go to seed funds, which is like what we all do, and we can make money, and like we have to be smarter about, you know, where we get liquidity from and all sorts of things.
Sure.
Or you just plow it all into this shit and you don't want to be in the middle. I get it.
Or you return half your fund.
Which is
back
great.
to your investors.
CRV just did, right? And
oh my gosh.
I love that. They've done it before.
I didn't see that. What did they do?
So a $500 million fund from CRV, they returned $275 million back, saying there's
a general fund?
I think so, yeah. And they just said the marks in this ecosystem are not going to make sense to deploy a $500 million fund. Like there's no exit.
I really respect that. Prop to SAR and those guys.
Well, you guys remember Founders Fund did that a little bit ago now, but
nobody has the guts to do the right thing and make these smart choices.
Well, it's just difficult because you're getting paid fees on that money. I mean, CRV did this years ago too. They did this like after the .com boom as well, right? So they have a history of this. But yeah, and we've said for a long time, the exact wrong size for a fund is $500 million.
Yeah, no question.
Why is that?
It's the hardest to return.
Because you're too small to plow money into things and you're far too big to ever return multiples in the fund. So like $500 million is like exactly the wrong size of a fund.
Yeah, especially now. I think, you know, in the post-factory model era, it's like the absolute wrong size.
It's like an inside joke in the VC industry that like, if you're going to be over 200 million, you better be over $1 billion. Like that is the no man's land. So good for them.
A lot of LPs won't even invest in that. It's like they're so in the middle. Like a lot of LPs these days are going for the barbell strategy. They want the like $100 million and under funds or the $1 billion plus funds.
100%. And like we're seeing this very I mean, I've had a strangely high number of LP conversations in the last several months because I generally don't talk to LPs that much. It's very clear that they're one, getting a lot smarter, and two, like the winds are turning.
Yeah, it's great.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else? I've got a good pop culture coming up. But what else is happening? Perhaps it's even the same one, Sam.
It's not.
Wait, do we have no other news to talk about, Jess?
This is not like super tech, but I thought it was relevant to, well, I mean, health tech, I guess, which is that Governor Newsom said insurance is now going to be paying for fertility treatments for women in the state of California.
I hope that the companies we've invested in that have fertility are going to crush it now with all that free government subsidy.
Well, they're going to require insurance to cover it. So I don't know the dynamics and all the nuts and bolts of how it's going to work, but I think it's really
Sam
exciting.
and I have been doing fertility since before it was cool.
I mean, I have a lot of fertility investments.
Have you guys?
I haven't been, but the funds that I'm involved in have been.
We did Stork Club together.
I don't feel like I should take any credit for that. I just like Kevin Mahaffey.
Oh, come on.
Brett, I thought you were going to talk about Newsom's veto of the AI regulation bill.
Also, Newsom vetoed the AI regulation bill, which means the LLMs don't have to like run their proposed changes and models through the state to get approval.
Smart man.
So that's great. So he's investing in physical and more human intelligence with more babies and less machine intelligence. Or more machine intelligence? More intelligence.
Perfect. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We were in Japan last week, as we've talked about, and we were talking to a bunch of Japanese people about the declining birth rates in Japan.
Japanese entrepreneurs
and investors. And, there's 110 million people in Japan, but they expect that in the next couple decades, there will be like 80 million people because the birth rate's declining so drastically. Most of the population is older these days. And so they're relying on robots to basically be their workforce. And then they actually don't care that their birth rate's declining.
Yeah, they actually think it's a good thing.
Really?
They're crazy. That's insane.
Sam, it's an island country, right? They have limited resources. And so they actually view it as a good thing.
No, that's a lot of Motor King bullshit they're telling you. You can't be China's neighbor and be excited about having a smaller military. Like, no way.
Sam, I'm kind of shocked to have to explain some world history to you, but like America is Japan's military.
Oh, I understand that for now, but
that's the deal. That's the post-World War II deal. You know that.
Sort of.
Not sort of. Like we guarantee Japan's safety.
We also guarantee a lot of other places' safety that we question whether we actually guarantee their safety.
But Japan's a different story because
is it?
We actually made a deal post-World War II. They cannot have an offensive military. They can only have a defensive military.
Yes, but that's been changed and stretched over time. They do have a military. But I agree with you, there is a deal as well. And they're growing that military and they're terrified of China as they should be.
I love our military historians over here.
Well, I mean, we were over there on a diplomatic, we were over there with the US-Japan Council on a diplomatic.
So they would never feed you any propaganda in that type of a setting.
Well, it's not exactly propaganda. I mean, this is the arrangement that we have.
The good news I will tell you about the Japanese and their self-defense is, as someone pointed out on Instagram Reels to me in my algorithm, a new Lisan al-Gaib has been born who will lead the people. Did you see this news?
No, none of us are on Twitter, Sam.
It's not Twitter, it's Instagram.
This is Instagram, Dave.
Oh,
there's a new child who will lead us to salvation, who's been born, who is the grandson of both Tony Hawk and Kurt Cobain.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I saw that. I did see that. And
that is huge. This is the child that we can pit our hopes and dreams on, and we can leave the Japanese to self-defense and victory.
What does this have to do with Japan? I'm so confused.
Well, they need a Lisan al-Gaib to lead them to victory and success.
Oh my God. I'm telling you though, the Japanese children are some of the smartest kids I've ever seen. This is my last note on Japan.
Okay, good.
We went to this abacus school. They learn with an abacus how to do math. And they can say 10 numbers within 2 seconds, like big numbers, like 3 and 4 digit numbers. These kids solve it instantly. It's incredible.
Guess what? I've also seen this on Instagram.
It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen.
I'm going to hire all of them as our financial analysts because they're just incredible.
If you're not going to have enough kids, the kids you do have better be fucking spectacular.
They are. I think we should creator economy, invest in these kids, Sam. I was telling Dave this when we were there. I was like, we need to pull a Sam Lesson deal. I want to pre-invest in these children's futures. Like, they're so smart. As soon as they're 18, I want to hire them. Like,
to be clear, Britt, this is like everyone in the US is arguing about whether you should become a programmer. And your big proof point is that children can do basic math really fast.
No, it's not even basic math. It is magic. You should watch these children. They're like 6 years old and they're incredible.
They're literally faster than ChatGPT.
They're faster. No, they actually are faster than ChatGPT.
ChatGPT actually can't do math.
I'll show you a video. It's incredible.
Yeah. Okay. From ChatGPT to abacuses. Okay. I'd like to wrap up with a pop culture corner and a plug for Nobody Wants This on Netflix. Have you guys watched it yet?
Me too. Yes, I'm so into it.
What is this?
And it's all about a podcast, actually, when it comes down to...
Yeah.
It's the new Kristen Bell, Adam Brody rom-com TV show on Netflix.
It's about the Foster cities.
That Aaron Foster wrote it.
So written by our friends Aaron and Sarah Foster, who last year on stage at WTF were talking about this show. Well, sorry, it's written by Aaron. Sarah's a producer. And I gotta thank the ladies for creating a rom-com that my husband will watch.
You watched it, Sam?
Sam called it...
We were watching the worst one about the woman on Nantucket that was just awful.
Perfect Couple, Nicole Kidman.
Oh, so good. No, that was good.
No, it wasn't.
I'm into all of this stuff.
I'm with Sam.
Give it to me all day long. I love it.
Perfect Couple was awful.
It's terrible. And so when offered the opportunity to opt out of The Perfect Couple into something new, I was all about this rom-com.
Did you see the kissing scene in episode 2? Because that was the most legit. Everyone's saying it was the number 1 kissing scene of like all rom-coms. I'm just saying.
Which thing are we talking about? Perfect Couple?
No, nobody wants this. Sam, take some lessons for how you kiss Jess. It's legit.
It's very simple. The trick is when you're going to kiss your wife, just ask her to put whatever she has on the ground first.
No, it's all about the face grab and the pauses right before you actually lean in. Ooh, it's good.
Would you think they ate the ice creams after they were on the ground? Like, because that seems a little dirty to me.
They actually did an interview on Doc Shepard's podcast, Adam and Kristen, and they talked about the kissing scene for like 30 minutes.
I like how this show just came out and Brit's already like deep on the back channel.
This is what I did on my way home from Japan.
It's been number 1 on Netflix.
Meanwhile, my recommendation is Tokyo Vice, which is like an amazing show on Max. Sam, you'd like it.
Which is also like super old. Okay.
It's not super old. It just came out. It's awesome.
Oh. Okay, fine.
Okay, Sam, what's your recommendation?
I have one last funny thing to mention before we go, which I think the audience might enjoy about pop culture. So I took a pitch from a very interesting entrepreneur in like the dating space of all spaces recently. And he was
it's
like... It's
hot again. There's a lot of dating stuff going on.
There's actually some interesting dating stuff going on. And
because all of the other stuff all of the dating apps are broken.
Totally. But we had the most hilarious missed in translation moment. He was like, Sam, you know what we're doing? We're doing that thing like from the scene in Her where they're on a date. And I'm like, you mean the one where like Samantha hires a prostitute to be the real life instantiation of like you're doing that? Like you're building an AI pimp? And he's like, no, that's not the scene. Like that's not what it's about. And I'm like, I have seen that movie many times. Like we built a company around it 10 years. That is definitely what happens. Turns out there's 2 scenes. He was referencing a completely different scene that I forgot existed. And he had forgotten about the prostitute scene. So we had a very awkward pitch meeting.
Are you going to invest in the company?
I thought he was pitching me an AI pimp, which isn't the worst idea I've ever heard for the dating scene.
I don't think so. I could be into it. But not in that way.
Like, I kind of think an AI pimp...
I was going to say, into it for who?
Into it as an investment, not for myself, but keep going.
I don't know. Anyway, it was a fun little lost in translation moment to reference another movie about Japan.
Okay, Britt, you got anything for us? What's cooking?
We saw the craziest tech in Japan, like magnetic levitation, and we learned about how a lot of different animals can become like chameleons and how like maybe there's a future where more animals can learn how to do shapeshift with their skin and how it's so crazy. Anyway, so I'm just going to say we should do more write-ups about it, Dave, because there's some cool shit. There's cool stuff going on the other side of the world. And it got us out of our sort of AI-minded Silicon Valley brains, which was really refreshing.
Isn't that nice when that happens?
Yeah, it was like real technology.
It's like, I'm short AI and long chameleon technology.
We also met this scientist that's about to win a Nobel Prize for the scattered field equation with tomography.
How do you know you're about to win a Nobel Prize? The whole thing is a surprise.
He's on the short list.
Oh, I'm sure it's like a political process. Oh, I'm sure that's like...
It's a pretty extraordinary breakthrough. I mean, he's figured out how to use radar to detect breast cancer in tissue with like extreme precision.
Way better than the traditional mammogram in any MRI machine.
Seeing the demo of this was like really inspiring. And he worked for 10 years on a single equation to figure this out. And it's going to be a real breakthrough. And so it just also is a reminder that there's a lot of breakthroughs still to be made and that people putting their time into trying to crack hard problems for a long period of time really does matter.
So when you have the radar detect the breast cancer, is there like a tiny Stinger missile that the airplane then fires to destroy the breast cancer?
No.
It is an interesting analogy. I mean,
oh God. Is that like a war analogy?
It is.
Here, just because this is what happens when you have 2 women on the pod, but incidents of breast cancer in women under 40 are up, everyone, although very, very treatable. So get your mammograms and screenings.
This technology will be launching next year, though. So soon you won't have to do a stupid mammogram.
No, but don't wait. Do not wait for this technology to get your mammogram.
Guys, while you're at it, don't forget to spay and neuter your dogs.
Are we watching The Price is Right?
Otherwise, someone will eat them.
I know. What was his name? What was that guy's name?
Bob
Barker? Bob Barker.
Yeah, it was Bob Barker.
Guys, we lost everyone at Bob Barker.
He loved spaying and neutering dogs.
Okay. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you guys for keeping me on my toes. To all our listeners, we've had some great combos in the back channel. It is a busy, exciting time. Excited to see everyone. Lots of events coming up. Many of our great listeners at WTF next week. It's going to be hot, Britt. So if, like me, you were planning a power suit.
No, I'm going to go sleeveless, I think. Sleeveless.
Yeah, we got it. It's going to be hot, 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 hot. And yes, with that, we'll see you next week on another episode of More or Less. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.